Being 5:15, I'd like to call the Monday, February 2nd, 2026 Board of Public Works and Sewer Utility Commission order. We stand for pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
There's no changes.
Being none, I'd look for a motion.
So move to approve the agenda.
Motion made by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Ritchie to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public input. Public input. Seeing none, we will close that and move on to approval of the November 3rd meeting minutes.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve November 3rd, 2025 minutes.
Second. Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Dorsey for the approval of November 3rd, 2025 meeting minutes. Any additional discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Well, here we go. Wastewater treatment plant facility upgrade presentation from Donahue and further discussion.
So I'd like to introduce Mike Gervitz. For all of you who haven't met him before, he was here several times. From Donahue, he put this presentation together, and with that, I'll let you roll with it.
Thank you, Robert. And good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think I was last here in the fall, September, October timeframe, and we haven't really talked about it, or I haven't been here since then, and I thought it'd be a good time to kind of give everybody an update. We have been working on the project since then, and give everybody an update on where things stand and talk about where things are headed. And there are a couple of things that we want to report on. There's been some news as it relates to your permit, and believe it or not, it's good news. There's some news related to this thing called the MDV, which is a compliance strategy we'll talk about, and I'll explain that. And then I think we want to spend some time talking about an important design decision that needs to be made we would suggest in the short term, so that design can advance in a particular direction. And we'll talk more about that. But one of the big purposes of tonight is to talk about, again, this big design decision and really kind of foreshadowing things, where the facility, the improvements will be built. But before we cover those things, I thought, since it's been since the fall, since I've been here since the fall, it'd be important to provide kind of a brief recap of things. What things did we talk about during the previous meeting? There's a lot here related to this wastewater project. So I'd like to recap some of those. So the reason I guess we're all here tonight, we're talking about this, the biggest reason is you have a new effluent limit in your permit. It's a low-level phosphorus limit. The reason you have this new limit is because EPA approved a TMDL, or a total maximum daily load. So the EPA, DNR, and then EPA approved it. A nutrient budget was established for the watershed that you're in, the Upper Fox Wolf River Basin. Okay, they established this overall budget for nutrients, and they allocate some of that budget to all the different dischargers. And your new nutrient mass limit, or your portion of that budget, puts you in a position that at times you would have to get to a very low limit, and your plant would not be able to meet that. Your current plant would not be able to meet that. So you need some technology, you need some improvements at your facility to meet that new limit. And this is not, it's not unique to New London. Many facilities around the state are facing very similar things. In fact, you guys in Oshkosh, we're working with Oshkosh, you're one of the last communities to have to comply with this type of low-level phosphorus limit. As we sit here today, we'll talk more about this, but as we sit here today, your current permit requires you to be in compliance with that new phosphorus limit by July 1 of 2029. Okay, we're in early 2026. That July 1, 2029 date is coming up pretty fast. But there's some good news that I'll report on in a little bit. Other thing that we've talked about before, first and foremost, was that phosphorus limit. But we also talked about the age of your facility. And some of you, quite a few of you, actually toured the facility and have been out there. I think Ben and Robert have been talking about the age of the facility even before this project started. But I think it's important to remind everybody that you have an aging facility. Much of the equipment there is at or exceeding or certainly fast approaching its reliable service life. And the plant's been there a while. The department, EPA, everybody, at a time like this makes you plan 20 years in the future. At that 20-year planning period, almost all those structures will be between 60 and 90 years old. So you have an aging facility. And then something else we've talked about before, you have one of the most complex facilities in the state. What we're showing is a schematic of your plant. What is in blue is your liquid train. What's in brown is your solids train. In other words, the solids are, when you clean the water, you generate solids, and those are processed by those brown unit processes on the bottom of the schematic. You can see there's a lot of circles and squares, and there's just a lot of unit processes here. There's a lot of complexity here. There's a lot of old complexity here. And I think one of the things that's important to consider, we've talked about it before, that this plant and the way it's configured, where you have a rock trickling filter, a plastic media trickling filter, and then activated sludge, you pump it 3 times. If we put in technology to meet the phosphorus limit, we just dropped in another technology, you'd have to pump it 4 times. But this type of treatment plant where you've got those trickling filters in advance of activated sludge is counterproductive to efficient phosphorus removal. And someday you'll have a nitrogen limit. It's counterproductive to phosphorus and nitrogen removal because those trickling filters consume all the carbon, and the carbon is the fuel that drives your biological nutrient removal. So you have a complex facility, an aging facility, but a complex facility that's really configured for an era, a service area that isn't ever probably coming back. Okay, it was really set up and configured for a service area that has heavy industrial loads, namely a dairy and dairy waste. This facility would make sense if you had a dairy discharging heavy loadings, but that isn't the case today. And most likely it's going to be serving largely residential waste. I mentioned at the onset that there's some news to report about the MDV. There's really 2 practical compliance strategies to meet this phosphorus limit. And one is the MDV, a multi-discharger variance. When I was here before, the previous meetings, there were rumors that the MDV, and when we did the previous study, there were rumors that that MDV was going to be extended, but it wasn't extended until more recently. So when we talked about the MDV before, it was set to expire in 2027. That's been extended, and I'll talk about that. The way the MDV works is you essentially buy your way to compliance until the MDV expires. So you pay for each pound of phosphorus, the pounds of phosphorus that you need, and you buy your way to compliance, and that buys you time, okay? But MDV is a variance. That's a key word. MDV is a variance. Variances aren't forever. Variances are for a short, defined period of time. We'll talk more about this. It wasn't an option. It was only an option until 2027 every time we've talked about this in the past. It's an option today for a longer period of time. We'll come back to that. The second practical option, and it's the one we've spent the most time talking about, is you upgrade the treatment facility to add filtration. And one of the things that we're exploring now is ways of addressing that phosphorus issue and addressing the age and complexity of the facility. Okay, so MDV is an option. Upgrading the existing facility is an option. And then there is, in the realm of scenarios that can achieve compliance, you can trade your way to compliance. You find trading partners out in the system that can remove that phosphorus, but for a facility your size, it doesn't seem at all practical. For one, where you are in the watershed, there's not many trading partners, or there's no trading partners that are big enough upstream from you. It's not like there's Green Bay or Madison or somebody like that upstream. So there's no upstream point sources. And then that would only leave you some sort of non-point source solution where you take acreage out of farming, you change the farming practices, or you completely take them out of farming, and it would require a tremendous amount of acreage, between 850 or 1,700 acres. And really, I don't know anybody in the state that's using that option to achieve compliance, because that's a lot of land. And if, for instance, to just kind of highlight what an undertaking that would be, and maybe how expensive that could be. If you decided you were going to buy some land and take it out of production and turn it into a park or a reserve or something like that, you'd have to buy more than a section of land, more than a square mile. Okay, section of land, 640 acres, beyond the vicinity of more than a section of land. And that would cost a lot of money today, if you look at the cost per acre, more than the filtration part that would achieve compliance. Okay, so we've really focused on the treatment facility upgrade because it addresses the phosphorus issue. It sets you up for future nitrogen compliance when that comes, and addresses the aging complex facility. We talked a lot about a number of different alternatives. The two that we ended up focusing on, you might remember these numbers: alternative 5.1 and 6.1. What I'm showing on the screen right now is alternative 5.1. On the top, we're showing the liquid train processes. On the bottom, we're showing the solids processes, and you can see how simple this is. You would pump it, you would screen it, and screening and grit removal, but you'd pump it, screen it, remove the grit, go into a B&R selector, which is part of the activated sludge system, into an oxidation ditch, part of the activated sludge system, in 2 secondary clarifiers. You see this? Yeah. You would settle it in here in 2 secondary clarifiers, filter it, disinfect it with UV light, and send it to the river. Okay. All of this would replace all those blue boxes that we saw on the previous slide. Biosolids, this is as simple as it can get in the industry. You would thicken those solids up, put it into a tank, and land apply it as a Class B liquid. That's what you do today. That's what you've done historically. So this would largely be business as usual on your biosolids land application. Land applying a Class B liquid. That's becoming more and more challenging. Haulers are having to go further all the time to find suitable fields. And I think today you haul as far as Freedom for land application. This would not address those logistical challenges that are becoming, increasingly difficult to deal with. And as a result, biosolids land application is becoming more and more expensive year after year. Nevertheless, as we sit here today, it's a viable alternative. The other alternative that we talked about is the same liquid train. All the blue boxes on the top are the same, but on the bottom, we would thicken the solids up, store them temporarily. Then we would squeeze the water out of those solids, put it in a heat dryer. So we would get those solids to like 90% and effectively produce, and I use this analogy, it wouldn't be exactly the same, but it'd be very, very similar to Milorganite. You can buy a bag of Milorganite at Home Depot or Menards or something. Some of us have put it on our lawns. You'd make biosolids pellets that at that point, after the drying process, they're Class A material and they're effectively unregulated, and they could be distributed to local landowners. And so we've seen, because of all the logistical issues and the future of land application of Class B solids, we're seeing a huge proliferation in dryers. And there's quite a few in the state now. The first one was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They've been making Milorganite, drying their biosolids for many years. But since that time, Sheboygan, we designed Sheboygan. That was one of the first ones. Kiel, Wisconsin has a dryer. I'm going to forget some here. Wausau, La Crosse, Beloit, River Falls, Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Dells, Lake Delton area. Reedsburg is putting one in. You're seeing more and more communities decide we're going to make an investment in something that has longevity. Okay, our next investment is going to be in a biosolids strategy that has longevity, rather than invest in Class B liquid, which is becoming more and more challenging. And one could say potentially, or maybe one high profile story related to land application that is going to make land application more challenging or take it off the table. So we can look to places like Maine where they've outlawed biosolids land application, okay? If you have a dry solid, it becomes very affordable to landfill if it was to come to that. But everybody else that's had a dryer is finding that they just tell a landowner they've got this source of nutrients and they're theirs for if they just haul them away. And those facilities have found that landowners are more than happy to take it. Some have even bid out those nutrients or those biosolids, and landowners are paying a little bit to take that material away, okay? And it's for all those reasons, all those upsides and the longevity of land application program or biosolids program that the community said, let's at least run that out. Let's explore that further. We spent a lot of time, especially at the last meeting, talking about costs. So this is a slide that I presented previously. In round numbers, 5.1 is a $50 million project. 5.1 is a $50 million project. 6.1 is in the vicinity of $66 million, okay? But we presented a range, and some of those decisions are going to define, we've got hundreds of decisions to make. Some of those decisions are going to kind of define where we are in that range. Okay, but we're going to talk about a big one tonight that has a pretty dramatic effect on those costs. We talked about funding before. We looked at USDA, rural development funding. We talked about Wisconsin Clean Water Fund, and we talked about just selling revenue bonds. The most favorable, after a lot of conversations with different people in different scenarios, the most favorable was a 30-year. The term of the loan would be 30 years through the Wisconsin Clean Water Fund. And as we sit here today, the interest rate on that would be 2.6%. You will be eligible for principal forgiveness. So that's essentially a grant, free money of $2.1 million. Okay. If you do revenue bonds, you wouldn't get any grant money, or you certainly wouldn't get principal forgiveness grant money. And then USDA doesn't appear to, we'll continue to monitor rural development, but when we talked to rural development last fall, they really weren't very bullish about having any grant money. One thing that we haven't talked about, and I do think is worth pursuing as we move along here, is pursuing congressionally directed spending. So that is money directly in a bill in Washington for your project, okay? Some could call it an earmark, set asides, but it's real today. There's some examples here. We worked at Wausau. They got $1.7 million in congressionally directed spending. So Congress says, Wausau needs help paying because they had PFAS in their water. Wausau could use some help. So Congress gave them $1.7 million. La Crosse, they had PFAS in their water. They got $3.7 million. And most recently, and this one was a surprise, Oshkosh found out that they're getting $3.2 million to pay for the exact type of project. We're working on putting in UV disinfection and filtration at Wausau. They're going to get $3.2 million, and they're also going to get $2.1 million in principal forgiveness. I suggest that as we move along, we work with Senator Baldwin's office. She sponsored all of these, and do what we can on behalf of New London. I can assure you that the need here exceeds that. If one looks at the ratepayers effects, the need here exceeds that in Oshkosh. Okay. We also talked about kind of the workflow, how things need to happen to progress this to the point of, putting our plans and specs together, going out to bid, getting under construction, all the things, there's a number of things that need to happen before you get to that point. And one thing that we've talked about tonight's the same, we've talked about, you're not at the deciding point, okay? We're not making a vote on this is moving forward or exactly what's moving forward to bidding. We are assembling good information to arm you guys to make the final decision. When is that final decision going to happen? So we're currently in preliminary design. The primary purpose of that is to work through a number of, there's hundreds of design decisions, work through a lot of those design decisions. Get to the point where we've got the design far enough that we can put together a very detailed, granular cost opinion. Okay, so you get much better cost information and cost resolution and cost certainty at this point after preliminary design, the dark green box. Okay, so we're doing preliminary design. The work of preliminary design will allow us to enhance our capital cost resolution and certainty. We'll then write a facility plan that writes up these different alternatives in a way that the department can review and approve. So you'll get to a point where you say, we're going to advance with this solution, and you submit that to the DNR, they review it and approve it. That's in a facility plan. And you can't get clean water fund money. You can't get clean water fund money without an approved facility plan. This blue box is your gateway to principal forgiveness and the low interest loan from the state. Okay. We'll present to you all and staff that facility plan information. You guys decide, yeah, we're ready to go public with this. And this is another key reason for doing preliminary design, because I can promise you when you have a public hearing and you go up and you say, here's what we're going to move forward with, what it's going to look like and what it's going to cost. You want to be right. You want to be a lot more right than wrong. And that's another benefit of preliminary design. So we've got that better cost certainty. That's why it's so important. People will remember what you said it will cost. And we want to make sure we've got enough information that we can stand up with confidence and say that. So we would present that facility plan to staff and you guys, and then you would say, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And it's time to go to the public and have our public hearing. Okay. This isn't just a meeting like this. This is a public hearing. We post it 2 weeks in advance. We open to the public. I promise you'll have probably a couple of comments. You always do. The public will have an opportunity to stand up and say what's on their mind, what they think. And then after that, the council will vote to send that on to the DNR for review and approval. Okay. Goes to the DNR, they approve it. In parallel with that, then we would be, or you would be advancing with detailed design. And I just want to make a point that we've said at this meeting and previous meetings, tonight's not the night where you're making a final decision. That's coming in. Any questions? So when you watch Netflix and you're streaming a show, they always give you the recap and then it sets you up for the show. Any questions on the recap? Yes, sir.
In the paper the other night, you're showing one for, I believe it's Appleton or Needham Menasha.
Okay.
And that's only going to cost roughly half of what ours is going to cost.
Okay.
Why is that? Isn't that a much bigger plan?
I'm not sure. I suspect, so I don't know that particular project. But I suspect their plant is configured. Now that's not a very, if it's Needham Menasha, it's a fairly new modern facility. So they were probably able to just plug something in there for what, $20–30 million at a facility that size. If we look at Oshkosh, activated sludge, we're working on the Oshkosh facility. That's getting ready to go to bid probably next week. That's filtration and UV disinfection. That's 43 million. Okay. And that's a facility that, you know, they average about 10 MGD, so it's considerably bigger. So this cost isn't, all that cost is not phosphorus. It's phosphorus plus addressing the age and complexity. So there is some permit news. At the beginning of this, I said, as we sit here today, your permit requires you to be in compliance by July 1, 2029. We made some calls to the department. We said, this community is doing everything they're supposed to do. 2029, and I think I talked about this, what a challenge that is. To complete design and build this thing, especially on your site. We're gonna talk more about that. And they said, oh, you guys actually get, New London actually gets, instead of a 7-year compliance schedule, if they need to do filtration, then the community gets 9 years, okay? So they will reissue your permit and change that compliance date from July 1, 2029, July 1, 2031. That's really good news for you guys, okay? So that takes, that gives you all a little bit more time. It gives your designer a little bit more time, and most importantly, it gives the contractor more time. And then I've alluded to this, but there is MDV news. In the fall, I don't remember the exact date, but in the fall, EPA did approve extending that MDV, multi-discharger variance, until September of 2035, okay? So that is now, as we sit here today, a compliance strategy that could get you to 2035. New London's eligible. A little bit more on how that works is so you will discharge too many pounds. So your permit requires a certain mass, has a mass limit in it. It only allows you to discharge so many pounds. Without the technology you need, you're going to discharge too many pounds, okay? That difference, the difference, you pay $66.62 as we sit here today. It's adjusted annually, about $67 a pound to buy your way to compliance during the period that you use the MDV. Okay, who do you pay? That money goes to the county, to the conservation department, and the county uses that money for projects out in the watershed that are intended to reduce the phosphorus in the stream, okay? So it'll cost, for you guys doing some quick math, something on, what would that cost? Something on the order of about $70,000 a year, okay? So it's an attractive strategy to just deal with phosphorus. It does buy time, or would buy time, but it does not address an aging facility, all the things that we've talked about. Okay. So I think this is one of the most important things to talk about tonight, and maybe talk about at subsequent meetings. If you remember at a previous meeting, we showed your existing treatment facility site, and you guys have been down there, and you've seen all the structures, and there's pipes in the ground, and the site is peppered with building structures and piping. The site is peppered with building structures and piping and electrical conduit. There's not a lot of green space left on your facility. So we would have to, and we talked about this on the plant tour, we have to find a way to build some stuff and keep stuff running. And then take some more stuff out of service and build some stuff there. And we'd have to kind of sequence our way in 3 or 4 phases to get this project built, okay? So, so we'll take a quick look at that. One option, and there are a myriad of options, different ways we could configure your existing site. And we've worked up 3. And I don't think that's the purpose of tonight, is to figure out where we want all of our different boxes, where we want these different structures. What we're going to present is one option of many on the existing site. And the option that we're going to show really is one that doesn't have any compromises. It kind of would, you'd end up with the ideal configuration, okay? There are other ways we could go about it that might streamline things a little bit. But the moral of the story here is it will take a lot of sequencing to pull this off, to build a new facility where your existing one is. The other option, and it's something that we haven't talked about at this meeting, the other option is we build a brand new plant immediately west of the Public Works building, okay? And we'll see what that looks like and why that's even worth talking about. That wasn't anyone's first inclination. But as we started to talk about and sequence construction We couldn't help but notice there was a pretty significant or a large lot west of the Public Works building, and talked to Robert and staff and said, we should really talk about this with y'all. So we want to spend a little bit of time going through option one, find a way to build this thing on the existing site. And you can do anything if you have enough time and money. Or option two is use the adjacent site west of Public Works. And I think it's affectionately referred to as the sledding hill. Okay. So option one, here's one example. And again, there are a myriad of ways we could go about this, but here's one example. Phase one. So this is the first year. We would build a tank to store solids so that we could remove another tank that removes solids. We would locate a new administration building here over on, is that Werner Allen? And that's maybe a better place for administration building and the traffic to and from. Put a parking lot associated with that. We could upgrade the yard waste, so we would keep yard waste in this vicinity. And this is one of the things that, you know, this option accommodates, is locating the administration building in a better spot, preserving yard waste. And you can see it's pretty valuable footprint, but we would find a way to preserve that. And we would start demoing where you see cross hatching. Anywhere you see cross hatching, that's something that's being removed. And we would build part of our effluent strategy there. We put in a chemical storage and feed facility there. So that's first year. Here's the next 2 years. We would remove the existing administration building, and that's where we put our dryer or biosolids processes. We'd remove this big tank and put in some more biosolids processes. We put in our screening and grit removal. This is our oxidation ditch. This is that B&R selector. Here's a selector. We would build one new clarifier where your existing rock media filter is, and we would keep this filter operating for a period of time. And we would, you know, bypass or get ready to do some construction over here in the vicinity of your current disinfection system. This is years 2 and 3, at least. And then there's a third phase. So all this gray stuff now, these are new structures that are running. We would need to build another secondary clarifier here, demo that building. And then we would build your filtration and UV disinfection up here because this clarifier is operating, and at some point this clarifier, we would put in new septage receiving here. This is year 4 and then some. And then finally, the final phase, we would be allowed to demolish the rest of the stuff that's not being used, okay? This is as long as, this probably bleeds into year 5, okay? It's a very long construction. So for a long time, for years, your facility is operating with less than an ideal configuration, okay? You're operating with parts and pieces. These guys have to find a way to make some of the old stuff work and the new stuff. The contractor is ultimately responsible for getting flows moved around the facility while he's doing construction. You'd have some temporary piping, pumping, electrical, and controls. You have to run electrical and controls out to stuff that's existing stuff that's going to stay, and you have to power your new stuff. There's a very long construction duration, elevated risk for disruptions and unforeseen conditions, things that, you know, really nobody could plan for that he's going to run into when he starts construction. And then finally, all of that speaks to the challenges of building this thing. Challenges means risk, means cost. But there's even the fact that a bidder is going to look at this and all that's involved. And there are some bidders that are going to say, there's some other nice projects out there. I'm really not that interested in bidding on this work. So you could, just the fact that it's that complex, you could lose some bidders, okay? All those bullet items are things that would add cost to the bid because a contractor has no choice. If this project is running out 4 or 5 years, he's got a hedge against what costs are going to look like, what his labor costs and some of those material costs are going to look like. All that's gonna factor into the bids. But option two, so if we build west of where the sledding hill is, west of the Public Works building, here's phase one. You can build everything. You just tell the contractor, have at it. The site's yours, and he could build everything. So really, the construction of the new facility is a phase. And then the second phase is the demolition of the existing facility. You'd get this, the pink stuff built, commissioned, up and running, while you already have a treatment facility, okay? So it takes some of the risk off with that commissioning. You can always divert back to the old facility for a while if you debug, you need to work some of the bugs out. But in effect, the contractor just comes in, builds the pink stuff, gets it up and running, and then the demolition could start. And I've worked on one other project just similar to this, where they built a new facility, and then they came back and they demoed the existing one. It's entirely possible, and it might even be advantageous to bid that demolition of the existing plant and the conversion to some other beneficial use, like a yard waste facility. You could bid that as a separate project and maybe get more accurate pricing at that point. And maybe even get a different contractor. You would open it up to different contractors. That's the way we handled it on one project that I worked on. But you can see there's just a very stark difference between these two projects. One with a lot of sequencing, one that's very straightforward. So it avoids, remember, all those bullet items. All those bullet items are things that bidders and contractors don't like to see and would certainly put in their bids. This really avoids all of that. So it streamlines construction. So option 1A, the one that we looked at, or a whole host of others, you're looking at 4 phases. Best case scenario, 3 long phases. You're looking at compliance late in year 4. If you remember how we went through all those different things, the last thing that was built is the thing that's going to get you in compliance with that phosphorus limit. The last thing you would be that filter, and that's in late year 4. So timeline, at least 4 years. From any contractor's perspective, that's kind of a risky project with that much sequencing. So that means that the cost is going to be, for that amount of work, the cost is going to be high. You'll pay a premium for that. That should say option 2 on the adjacent site. 2 phases, 1 phase for the facility, and it's pretty typical risk, and costs are more in line with the going rate for a new treatment facility. So, and we did talk to a contractor, and we looked at these 2 alternatives. Let's call the drier option. Let's call that $60 million in construction for tonight. Okay, round numbers, $60 million. Said, we're going to add, we looked at the situation. Are we going to add 10%? He said, easy. You're going to pay easily 5, 6, maybe more $1 million, depending on all the different decisions to build on the existing site. Okay. You could end up at the same endpoint, a new plant. And if you were to end at the same endpoint, a new plant, demolition of the existing plant, you're gonna end up at the same place. You're gonna have that in both scenarios, option 1 or option 2, but you're gonna pay $5 to $6 million more on the existing site. Okay, and that was just from a casual conversation. He didn't say maybe 5, he said easy. Right? Well, it's only 10%. It's only 10%. Okay. So our recommendation would be to advance the design on the adjacent site. There's more value in that. You may lose some, that might be a recreation area for the community. I promise you, you can replace that for far less if you wanted to. But you would end up in both scenarios, option 1, option 2, a new plant, removal of the existing facility. Option 1, building on the existing site will easily cost you $5 or $6 million more. And I think that's why we thought we'd talk to you about it. And gosh, nobody likes change orders, and we're pretty good at putting plans and specs together that don't have a lot of change orders. We're pretty proud of our track record there, but when you're working in an existing facility with all that sequencing, things will come up. You'll have more things come up.
I think it'd be more.
What's that?
I think it'd be more than 5 or 6 months. That's
Thank
of
you.
savings. I mean, when you're trying to put that plant, you know how many temporary things you have to put in that you're paying for that you're just gonna tear out and throw in the garbage when you're done with them? We can move that dirt and make a new sled hill.
Thank you for that. I never want to get accused of being too aggressive on some of these things. It starts at 5 to 6 million. So thank
It's
you.
gotta be higher. I mean, that does, just looking at your plans, as many times you gotta move wires. I mean, the thing has to run. I don't,
I think you're right.
I'm not in your wheelhouse, but I don't foresee you being able to do all that and not have some sort of issue. And the last thing we want is water coming back up and house us, because we have an issue down there, because we wanna try to save a sled hill.
And that's talking like a contractor right there. He's gonna put a ton of money in to cover his bypass
would.
pumping and yeah, 100%. You own all the problems at that point.
You're saying build on the adjacent site,
Yes, sir.
that includes option 2 to go to the sled hill, or is that staying exactly where we are?
Sir, this is all these pink structures right here.
Yep.
That's the sled hill.
Okay.
That's the sled hill. And I
Yep.
probably confused things by, sorry, by putting this hatched pattern over the existing plant. So this is your existing facility right here. And you could turn that into some other beneficial use. This is your sled hill right here.
Never should have built the garage.
I have to-
Oh, sorry.
I have to agree with Dave that I think that 5, 6 million ain't gonna cover much. It's gonna be more,
I can't
just with
disagree
the
that.
longevity of the project. Making sure everything goes in correct order. We don't get no backups. We have no other unforeseen problems. I think it makes a lot of sense.
What contractor's not gonna add money? With the price of inflation right now on year 4, say year 3. What contractor isn't gonna add a couple $1 million just to cover his own butt in case prices go up? I mean, you know they're gonna go up, but you can't guess at what they're gonna go up at this time. So he's gonna add to it, but he would be dumb not to.
And I guess my concern has been, we've been having problems with the digester and how long that has been taking to try to get things taken care of there. And now we're hearing that the second one is starting to go. We don't have the time to really push this out any further. The equipment is failing, has failed, is failing, and we're spending money to fix equipment that we're gonna tear down. So the sooner we get this done, the better it's gonna be for everybody. And like Dave said, we can move that dirt somewhere else and make a new ski hill somewhere else for far less.
We have property north of town that's recreational.
That would be, yeah, but we've got the spaces for that.
When they start moving the dirt, just drive it across town, drop it off over there, and make a new hill.
Exactly.
And start developing recreational for that part of the city. I mean, everything's on this side, and it's been discussed that the community doesn't have nothing as far as recreational on the north side of town. Possibility of starting that.
One advantage too is you got the old plant there, so if you have an issue with this plant, you got a backup.
Yes, sir. Exactly right. You can, the contractor and staff, when they make that conversion over, if all of a sudden some controls need to be tweaked a little bit, you just go back to the old plant for a little bit. So that's a tremendous benefit while you're getting everything online.
Backup.
Yep, 100%.
And if during this process, if we decided to phase it, keep it on the same lot, if we decided to phase it and keep it on the same lot, and we had some issues like that, now we've got a whole city sitting here going, what are we supposed to be doing? What are we doing with this wastewater? What are we doing with our water? Are we, God forbid, we ended up in a boil order or something because something has gone wrong, terribly wrong. And I could really see that happening in this.
I could assure you, we'd go to great lengths and make sure the contractor goes to great lengths so that no one floods out. but you got a lot of treatment to provide, and that's where it gets
Right.
really challenging, is maintaining treatment.
next to the river.
That Great Lake costs us great.
100%, 100%.
The farther they go in length, the more we pay.
It's all about money.
Mhm.
Contractors, the answer to risk is more money. And you mentioned timing. I think that's a good segue to schedule. So you have submitted your intent to apply for this, I hate fiscal years, but you applied to get money in state fiscal year 2027. So if things moved along steadily, the way I think the intention is to move things along here, this is what the project execution strategy would look like. We would continue to do preliminary design until the May timeframe. Then in May, staff and y'all would have kind of those the final answers, with the benefit of that preliminary design work that we talked about, so that we could talk about those and you decide, are we going to go public? Are you going to do 5.1 or 6.1? Okay, that's in the May timeframe. That would put you in a position to have your public hearing in the June timeframe. Okay, so that's what I'm showing here, preliminary design. You have a facility plan. I'm showing the 1st of June, but a facility plan ready for that public hearing and to go off to DNR in June. And then down here, we would continue on with the plans and specs that DNR needs. So you continue on with design to put together bidding documents, but there's 2 really important milestones here. If you're a principal forgiveness receiver, you need to submit your Clean Water Fund application, document that's this thick, accompanied by your plans and specs by the end of September. Okay, it's a very important date. You submit all that information at the end of September. And then at late December, early January, you'll get final confirmation that you are in fact going to get your $2.1 million in principal forgiveness. Okay, so late in 26, early 27, you'll know you got your money, your free money. And then you finish design, you bid it out in the spring of 27. See my cursor? Bid it out in the spring of 27, do contracting, contractors underway. Let's call it June of 27, a year from June of 27, thereabouts. Okay. It's really important that you get this application in and plans and specs. That's what PS is for. Plans and specs in at the end of September. Okay, that's how you secure your $2.1 million in free money. If you miss that deadline, these are, sorry. Year after year, these are the deadlines. If you miss that, you go into the next fiscal year if you want certainty that you are in fact going to get principal forgiveness. And I think when you're dealing with the public and it's time to award a large contract, you want to be able to tell them, yeah, we're gonna, our loan agreement includes that $2.1 million grant. So if you miss those deadlines, it kind of puts you off a whole year. You'd have to then go, if you miss the 2027 deadline, you kind of lose a year to have that same cost certainty. Okay, you lose a year. So I think you mentioned you've got an aging facility that costs more than zero to keep running. There's another motivation here to keep everything advancing so that you can get out to construction as soon as possible with the grant money that you should get. So I think everyone's intention is to do that. We wrap up, again, I just want to summarize this. So we wrap up preliminary design, May timeframe, June is the facility planning. And that is when I said you get to a point where the community is going to decide with certainty, here's what we're going to do. That's June. Okay. And we'll be back with more information, but that's June timeframe. Does that make sense to everybody? And I got some notes in here. It's a very comfortable schedule, what we're showing here. It's very comfortable for option two. It's very comfortable if we build on the sledding hill. You're already running up against some time constraints if you build on the existing facility, even if we move at this pace.
I mean, if you just go back to your slide that you don't have to go back. I mean, just talk about that forgiveness points when you talk about kicking the can down the road. I mean, that $60 million project in another 5 years is gonna be what?
Well, that's
Plus,
true too.
plus you're playing the points every year.
Yep.
And then that 60
Oh.
million could be who knows what.
100%. It'll never be cheaper than it is today.
Correct.
So every year a delay, it costs you more to keep the place running. You run the risk, interest rates do something different. They could get worse, and then you run the risk, there's no more principal and forgiveness.
I mean, that has been something I've been approached on is, well, let's keep the can down the road as long as we can. That's just gonna end up costing
Never gonna cost.
dramatic more money, yeah.
Well, plus we're paying $70,000 a year just to keep doing what we've been doing. And that's, right there, we're throwing good money after bad. The sooner we stop doing that, that's another $70,000. We can do a lot with $70,000 in the city.
Sled hill.
And John, to your point, I mean, kicking the can down the road. That's a sense what we've been doing for the last 30 years,
Correct.
because we haven't had any, need to do anything, so we've just been updating slowly. Well, if we would have updated, to a newer plant 30 years ago, 20 years ago, we've been a way different scenario. So we have been kicking the can down the road, keeping rates low for everything. But now we're to the point where
We had a road.
Yeah.
Road ended. There's no more.
there's no
road.
more road. There's the bridge.
Robert, didn't you say that when you first started, one of your first thing was you went through that plan? And they gave you a preliminary number at that time, what cost would be?
What was it been, like 18?
It's about
18 to 20? Yeah, somewhere in there. It wasn't more than 20, I know that for sure.
And that was how many years ago?
That was in 2022.
So look how much the prices went up in 4 years.
Also, if we keep kicking the can down the road, it's gonna take 4 years to build a new plant. What do we do when the plant's not working for 4 years? You're gonna be paying violations like you would.
And more money out of the city budget for fixing, just keeping
Yeah,
stuff
we
band-aided up.
can't
to
wait.
work. I'm just bringing this up because that's something that's been thrown out to the public that, hey, let's wait. I don't think fiscally that's responsible to do that.
Someone mentioned rates, and one thing I do want to point out, so if the city was to advance everything as it's outlined here, and the other thing is construction would be done in 2030, let's say by the end of 2030. That gives the guys, these aren't always easy limits to meet. They're pretty low level phosphorus limits. So it gives some time to get everything worked out and for staff to get comfortable with it. It increases the odds that, you put the city in a tough spot if the contractor leaves on Monday and you need to be in compliance by the next Monday. This would give 6 months to dial everything in and get it optimized and have compliance be a walk in the park. Staff cares about that, maybe the ratepayers don't. There is some good news if you were to go about this, or something that's worth pointing out. You wouldn't make your first full principal and interest payment until May of 2031. Okay, so that means you've got 27, 28, 29, 30 to ratchet in those rates, because we talked about it before, pretty significant rate increases. You do have years to ratchet that in and kind of feather that in. So it's one thing, with the schedule we're showing right here, first principal and interest payments not due until May of 2031.
Us adding polyphosphates, how much is that going to affect in the future?
You probably add a little bit for corrosion control in town here.
They have started, yes.
It just started. We've looked at that a lot of different places.
It's almost 2 years.
Yeah, it doesn't,
Time-wise.
it's more than zero. You're adding a little bit, but it's a little bit. It's a very small fraction. We've looked
The
at that
new
time and again.
System will take care of that.
Yeah, and then this will remove the phosphorus it needs to remove. So you're taking it out on one end of town, You're adding a little bit to protect public health on another part of town. And I do want to portray it as you're adding a little bit. It's a small amount.
We're adding polyphosphates to get rid of lead.
That's a good thing. So that's schedule. I think the moral of the story is keep moving. You do have a deadline approaching in September. And then, so what should happen next? I guess Donahue will continue to develop these preliminary designs. We've had multiple meetings with staff. We'll continue to have those. We'll work with the DNR so that they reissue your permit and you take advantage of that 2 additional years. But I think somehow, I guess we're looking for concrete direction. We want to build west of the Public Works building, focus all your time and energy there. You hired us to design it one time. So we want to make sure we just design it one time, and we're looking for direction from the city as soon as possible. Which site?
Any discussion on that?
I have to make a motion to bring it to council.
When
Make a
do you need
decision on
that
which site?
decision? Are you looking tonight for that decision?
Well, I don't know that we can get that decision tonight, but I think February 17th is what we're.
I kind of ran with our discussion, being that it is a sled hill and, some involvement with Park and Rec Committee as well. Just going through the whole scenario and then doing a joint, Board of Public Works, Park and Rec meeting before council, to make that decision. And then if chosen, move it forward in council. So by the 17th, we would be underway.
So then we're not really looking for a motion tonight. We're just gonna absorbing this and we'll move it on to move it forward
I think
to the
the
next.
council meeting's on the 18th.
Oh, yeah, that's
on
right.
Wednesday
It's moved
this-
to Wednesday.
Okay.
Because of the potential of an election that.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're gonna have a joint meeting before the next council meeting to discuss this. Is what you're saying?
As an option.
As an option.
Yep.
Correct.
And I think we should. I think that's a great discussion for the scope that we're looking to vote on.
If you want, I mean, since we're not doing council on Tuesday and there is no election, you could do your joint meeting on Tuesday. Cause I don't know if it's gonna be more than a half an hour discussion, before a council meeting. So if you wanna do that, Tuesday night, have that joint meeting and then refer that to council on the Wednesday night. That's just an option. Throwing it out there. I know it's another night coming in for a meeting, but I think you're gonna need more than a half an hour before a council meeting to.
I think it
Talk
takes more than a
about
half an hour just for one thing.
Again, I think.
I don't have to be so long-winded.
Should be, so you okay with that if we do it
Fine.
Tuesday?
I don't know what that,
Sooner the better.
Don't we just say it's gonna cost more than 6 million and
well, no, I just,
kidding.
Or if there's other options, I mean, that was just a suggestion.
So the two chair did talk already. And they are on board with the Tuesday meeting.
We need a motion for that, or are we just
You
gonna,
guys would schedule it.
we're gonna schedule it, that'll be good?
And the decision would just be to focus on the site for design. The decision would not have to be, hey, we gotta figure out and approve the site for a new Sled Hill location if you go that. Those are things that we can start planning, do pros and cons for different sites for, the relocation of the things. It'd be a matter to give Mike a little bit more marching orders of where that process.
And while he's here, if I'm understanding correctly, we wouldn't even be looking at a new sled location site until maybe 2028, correct?
I think.
2026, it's 2025, 26 now, so it would be 26, 27, we'd still have it.
We'd want the contractor to be able to get there and on the site next year.
Okay, so we would need to be, okay.
So I guess, get back to numbers. We're gonna be asked, what are we actually saving? I know we talked about that 10% value. What are we saving by moving that by eliminating that sled hill and sliding it to the option 2 first, trying to piece it together over here.
I would portray it as $6 million or more. And, cause I don't wanna, I know it's easily $6 million, cause the contractor told me that, it's around 10%. But I fall in the camp when rubber hits the road on bid day, it's more than that. But is that a fair portrayal as you have conversations around?
Yep, I
town?
just wanted that out there, so we
Yeah.
had some kind of a, I mean, obviously, numbers are never guaranteed anyway, it's
Right.
just an estimate of what that option would end up saving us.
If you're talking to somebody, it should be absolutely common sense that if you try to put temporary stuff up, it's gonna be a substantial cost. Then if you could just rebuild it,
And the
flip a
amount of
switch and turn it on.
And you're alleviating all the potential problems.
Yes.
If something goes down and it's bad, like Belinda had brought up, all the concepts that'll come with that, the rivers right there. Not being able to flush your toilet for how long until it's fixed because the plant's down.
And to your point, Mike, the 10%, hypothetically $6 million, that's just the bid cost. That doesn't include any potential change orders that would come up.
Yes.
There will be change orders. There will be, problems that come up if you would take that scenario. So that's an addition to the 10%.
So we've been looking at this at the 6.2 option at $70 million on the existing site.
6.1.
Sorry, 6.1. I keep thinking it's the second option. There's 5.1 and 6.1. We're not looking at any twos anymore. Okay, so yeah, we're looking at that. We were looking at that as being $70 million. This would bring it down to that $64 million mark.
Yep, I think now, and we're gonna know a lot more, and we'll be able to talk about options of we'll have a lot of good cost resolution, so we'll know what parts of the project cost, and so we could, look at different scenarios, different construction scenarios that'll allow us to move that cost around a little bit. But I think if you build on the new site, you're far more likely to end up at this midpoint here. Yep.
Mike,
More-
go ahead.
One other thing to remember is if anybody's coming to you and they're looking at these slides or they've seen these slides, when you're looking at just square boxes and round circles over a site map versus everything that actually takes place, to put perspective to it, the total disruption of that site for 4+ years, it's huge.
Do you have a map of the logistics that's underground there?
We have as-built, but the as-built aren't close. There's stuff where we don't know where it is.
Right,
We know
and
a vicinity, but they could easily wreck it when they're digging.
And that's exactly what I was going for, is that would be a great site picture for the general public to have knowledge, because like you brought up, you're looking at circles and square boxes. That's what you see.
And this may be here, but it may be over there.
Basically, all the grass you see at the treatment facility, for the most part, has hundreds of feet of different pipes and conduits underneath all that stuff. So if you're trying to get to something underneath a conduit bank, how do you move that conduit bank? Because everything's so close together to get to the pipes that you need to reroute.
If you do have something like that, I definitely would like to see it. I mean,
Okay.
come close to what is actually there.
I'll see what I can dig up.
Yeah, and we have site piping plans. I can include that to highlight in a future presentation, the complexities that you're talking about. We do have some drawings that would make that point. And then removing a structure and building over it is different than removing a structure and turning it into a yard waste facility.
Or something else. I just had them label it as yard site facility.
It's gonna be labeled sledding.
So Mike, regarding the biosolids option, the 6.1 compared to 5.1.
Yep.
The biosolids option is more expensive for construction.
Yep.
But the operation cost of getting rid of the biosolids would be cheaper than trying to get rid of that class B materials,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So at what point do we kind of have a good understanding about this investment for the dry biosolid system and knowing how much the operating cost is going to come down? Where do we understand that?
That is when we get to this point. So I talk about here the CapEx. We're doing our preliminary design. We're doing all of our sizing. We're looking at how much natural gas we'll need for our dryer operation, chemicals and polymer. Once we get to the facility, the point where we're ready to present the facility plan, we'll spend a lot of time, I can assure you, talking about capital costs. But we'll also talk about operating costs. And I do want to prepare everyone. You won't, it's not like you're going to pay for the dryer in 5 years. But there will be, from an annual basis, there will be cost savings associated with drying. And we'll explore and talk more about those when we get to the facility plan stage.
And not only the drying, but pumping one time instead of pumping
Yep.
4 times.
Yep.
I mean, there's going to be cost savings.
Yep.
And all that. So, okay.
Yep. More energy efficient.
Currently, the Class B is regulated heavily as far as, that's why we're hauling to different fields, and the restrictions on that are getting tighter and tighter, that the trends are going to the Class A. So even if we were to consider Class B today, tomorrow we might be mandated to do the Class A.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. It's entirely possible a news story comes out. So one thing that we can say is it will become increasingly challenging to get rid of Class B biosolids. It's a lot more challenging today than it was 5 years ago. 5 years from now, it'll be more challenging, and that means more expensive. That will happen. The other thing that could happen is there's this really high profile story, true or not, doesn't matter. A high profile story about Class B biosolids. There's a lot of people and a lot of nonprofit organizations out there that are very opposed to it. There could be a high profile story that causes a knee-jerk reaction, and there are limitations that far exceed or a complete moratorium on land application. And Maine did it. Texas is very seriously looking at it. Other states are looking at just a complete ban on Class B biosolids. And you have to ask yourself, do we want to spend a whole bunch of money building new stuff for Class B biosolids, or do we want to invest in something that produces an unregulated biosolids product? And then even if for some reason that became outlawed, you could still landfill that very cost effectively because you've gotten the water out. And the tipping fees are considerably less, and we can talk more about that at a future facility planning meeting. It costs a small fraction to landfill those solids versus wet solids. And that's why I'm sorry, but time and again, you'll see communities throughout the state making the decision, we have to make a big investment in our biosolids program. Let's invest it for a dryer that has the longevity.
Right, and that's exactly what I was gonna say is the Class B, if we go with that Class B, the dryer is basically what's gonna convert it to Class A. If we don't do that now, 10 years from now, it's gonna cost twice as much.
Yeah.
And we've already spent the money for Class B already.
That's the killer, right? We've spent a whole bunch of your limited capital on something that
Correct.
has to be replaced.
What happens when everybody starts doing this? That stuff isn't gonna be so easy to get rid of, is it?
You know,
As more and more people look at this, they're probably going to go to dryer type situations. And at some point, there's gonna be a lot of that around here. It might be harder to get rid of.
But
I'm
then-
just a devil's advocate.
By then, the DNR is gonna restrict new stuff, so we'll have to change it all.
So, and my thought on that, on the dry solids is you can't put the wet, you can't spray that stuff on my yard right now. What we have to truck away, you can't put it on my yard. But the dry solids, I could put in my yard. So we could get rid of some of that just by giving it to people who would be going out to buy fertilizer for their lawns.
Yeah, some facilities, you talk about putting a yard waste facility there where your existing plant is. Some communities are taking that. In fact, Sun Prairie, working with Sun Prairie, theirs is under construction right now. Their intention is to mix some of it in with their yard waste. I don't know if you want to do that or not, but it becomes more attractive to landscapers. And then what other facilities that have dryers have found out is farmers love the free nutrients. And with these, if you just go by nitrogen and phosphorus and apply it on the land, you don't get any carbon, so it doesn't replace your topsoil. But with biosolids, you get some carbon that replenishes the topsoil. So the experience of other people with dryers is this is very desirable stuff, and they haven't run into a situation where a large ag producer doesn't say, I'll take all of it.
And another tell of Class A dryers, even our hauler is looking at getting one. So that tells you everything you need to know, because they're having a harder time finding fields and farmers that will allow that stuff on their fields. So it's the future.
Any further discussion? I guess if we have no further discussion, we can move on. I would like to thank you, Mike, again for well-organized plan, keeping us updated as much as you can.
Thanks, everybody, for all your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work on this, and I was close on the time.
You were a lot closer than I was.
We had a little free discussion on Thursday, and I'm like, I think it's gonna run. a lot
Whenever
longer
I
than
say
that,
how
but-
long something's gonna take the over. Thanks, everybody.
But I do appreciate your time, and feel free to pack it up. It won't be a disturbance. I know you got a ways to travel, so.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
All right, moving on to recommend and approve the council the GFL contract for citywide garbage collection. Mr. Gursky?
Okay, we received copy of the contract for solid waste collection services through GFL. I went through it, made some changes, mostly they had some of the verbiage wrong and some of that from the RFP. Sent it, once I made those changes, I handed it over to Chad. He gave it to our attorney, was looked over, got approval. He said everything looked good on his end. So, once I sent that back to GFL, they approved it was pretty much, they had the cost per year kind of mixed up. They had just a percentage raise versus the actual outline cost that was put in the RFP. So those changes were made. However, today, when I went back through it, because I actually received an email from Outagamie County waste collection, and it kind of triggered some things for me to look through. So when I went through this contract again, and you can go through it like 20 times and tend to find something. But on page, if you can go to page 5, Chad.
What section?
That would be section 2.4. So 2.4, it says term. I found in the term of the agreement, it does begin on April 1st, 2026. But the expiring April 1st, 2031 is incorrect. And that will be changed to expiring on December 31st of 2030. That would complete that 5-year cycle if we would have started at the first of this year. So that change will be made, just so we can be on a cycle year that ends on year end. And there was one other, and that was page 11, 5.2.1. And that has to do with the service fee adjustment. just below it where the 522, it actually states the cost per month per resident. But up in that second paragraph, the rates of solid waste collection shall be increased on every year anniversary by 3% or the trash and sewer CPI index, whichever is greater. That language will be stricken out, the trash and sewer CPI. Because it was agreed upon, and in RFP, they sent us that it would go off of that 3% increase. And those lines indicated cost below. So it will be those costs that are listed on there. And those are the two things that will be changed when you see this in the council pack.
And one thing to point out, so if the public sees those rates right there, like in 2027, 12.10 per resident, that's our cost that we're paying. We are increasing a little bit for administration off of that, so don't grab
That is
that
correct.
number. There'd be a little bit more for administration on our end.
Anything further on this? See nothing, I guess I look for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mr. Dorsey, second by Mr. Ritchie. To approve and recommend the council a GFL contract for citywide garbage collection. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. It's been a long time coming, ain't it?
Yes.
Okay, let's move on. Consider the DTAC agreement for the brush disposal. Robert?
Okay, for this, kind of segue into that big section on that map that was hashed out and said for future use for brush collection. A lot of the looking in I did, if we had storage area, we'd be able to have more ability to bring contractors in to do bulk grinding, possibly twice a year. It all depends on storage and items like that. And I won't get totally into that right now. All I'm saying is right now our options are limited, and I did look into that. It was asked last year about the hauling, and they did quote me a price, which was just over $9,700 more if DTAC came to the site and removed that brush and hauled it to their facility. That price they quoted me was $22,200. And currently they would re-up the agreement for us to haul the brush out there, same as last year, for that $12,500. Like I kind of indicated in my memo, if that's the direction we're headed, and looking for that option to be able to have somebody come in and haul it off site, seeing as how we really don't have a lot of storage area. I would kind of, at the end of the year, I'll have a good idea where we stand as far as amount of passes that we sell to the yard site. I believe at the end of this 2026, we have renegotiations with the outlying municipalities or townships that want to use the site, but see if that's something through an increase in the fee, possibly $5, and then an increase or an adjustment to the townships that we wouldn't be able to cover that additional cost and free up more time for the staff that we have. That option is in the works, and I'll be bringing that in fall for sure. So look for it. But until then, my recommendation is to stick with our current agreement at the $12,500 to be able to haul our brush out to the DTAC site.
Further discussion?
At one time, we talked about getting grinder ourselves, that thrown out or
We do have an actual very nice used Vermeer that we purchased. They use it now out on the street, and we do chip quite a bit of our brush. The problem is it's during the busy season when a bulk of that is coming in. The staff is so busy trying to catch up on everything else, we don't have time to run that. Plus, trying to keep that room and pushing up into a pile, you intertwine everything. It's really not a good option to feed it through that chipper. Yeah, it would be nice if we had the space and had a bigger setup, but those are very expensive. It works very well out on the street though. It's nice having that option to, instead of the old cut down, grab, try to pack it in a truck. Now with that setup we have, it works really well.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, I would look for a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Dorsey. To consider DTAC agreement for brush disposal. Is that the $12,500 number?
Yes, it is.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Director's report.
I have no service anniversaries this month. Like I put in my memo, the only highlight that I really have to go over is the kind of winter season, snow season that we've had so far this year, running into those two ice events. We went through a considerable amount of salt. There's no good option in those scenarios. Your brine application and items like that don't really do any good when you're dealing with that wet of a snow or ice coming down. Your granular application is your best fight towards that, and thus we've used quite a bit. When I received the call from Wapaka County stating that they would be able to fulfill our last order of 180 tons to fill our shed back up, and that would put us at around 500 tons received for this snow season. That would be the limit that they would be able to provide and no more for this snow season. So come fall, when we reorder, we'd be able to go back to our normal load or whatever our order is. But for this snow season, that is it. I do not think it will be a big issue as far as getting through the snow season. I think carefully applied salt in the right areas will get us by just fine. If we do run into icing events where we're going through it at a faster pace, unfortunately, we'll have to go to more of an abrasive, which I want to steer clear of. It would only be in the hill areas, areas of importance where you have more volume, and we need that kind of control to safely travel. So, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to avoid that and keep the storm systems from taking on any abrasives. Other than that, I have nothing else to add.
All right, thanks, Ms. Skarsky. Future agenda items?
Wastewater treatment plant, that'll be on there for a long time. So, if anybody has anything else, feel free to bring it to one of us and we'll get it on there.
All right, thanks. Next Board of Public Works meeting is March 2nd at 5:15. We're also looking at that joint one for in February. So potentially be the 17th. I think that's what we decided. Be a joint Public Works Park day before the council. I think we addressed that. Everybody's good with that.
And will that be a 5:15?
That'll be a 5:15 start, I would assume. Seems to work well for everybody. And Mr. Bissell, you're okay with that?
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. Nothing more. Looking for motion for adjournment. Motion made by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Ritchie for adjournment. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.